I'm Dr. Jeff Kingsley, and welcome to another edition of Riding in Cars with Researchers. Today's going to be fun. Here's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about electronic source documents. We're going to talk about why, what it does, what's the purpose. We're going to talk about what it shouldn't be. We're going to talk about why you need it and how the industry should react. Okay? So let's start. What is source? Source is the first place you write down data in a research trial. If you write down somebody's blood pressure on a Post-it note, that Post-it note is part of the source documentation. Most often today, source documentation is collected on paper across the world. Most often, source documentation is collected on paper. Paper has issues. It's far too easy to make mistakes on paper. It's inefficient. It's easy to lose paper. Paper can go up in a fire. But more so than that, it's too easy to accidentally write down the wrong blood pressure. And nothing prevents you from doing that. Accidentally making an error in the order with which you did things. And paper can't stop you from doing this. What is electronic source? Well, what it's not is source documents just simply in an electronic format. Microsoft Word would do that. That's not the point of electronic source. eSource is the ability to capture that source data, that source information in a system that helps improve quality. Now, how would it do this? Blood pressure is a good example. On paper, I can take somebody's blood pressure and it's 180 over 120, which is elevated, significantly elevated for anyone who doesn't know. And I might not be paying attention. I'm talking to this person and they're telling me about their vacation, and I write down 180 over 120 and I move on to the next vital sign and I move on to the patient reported outcomes, and I never really addressed the 180 over 120. Well, what does electronic source do for me? When you're designing electronic source, you tell the computer in advance a systolic blood pressure should be between, and you decide what your parameters are. I want all systolic blood pressures to be between 90 and 140, for example, or 90 and 120 to be a little bit more stringent. And anything that's outside of that parameter, I want a warning to immediately pop up. So now back to my example. I write down 180 over 120, and as I'm typing in the 120, the computer already alerts me that I wrote down 180 because it's outside of the parameters. And the computer says to me, is this real? Now maybe it wasn't real. Maybe I was using an electronic blood pressure meter and I used the wrong size cuff. The person is or is not obese, and I used a cuff that was too big or too small for that patient. And this now reminds me, and I say, my mistake. Let me change out the cuff size. I redo it, and lo and behold, the patient's blood pressure is normal. Error and adverse event averted. Alternatively, I can look at the 180 and say, yeah, the 180 is correct. Now the computer prompts me and says, is the 180 an adverse event? Well, yes, it is an adverse event. This is an acute elevation of this patient's blood pressure. Are we planning on changing any concomitant medicines? Has the principal investigator been notified of this spike in blood pressure? That's what electronic source documents should do for us. That's immensely powerful. That's a huge advance in our ability to collect high quality data for our research trials. That's a huge advance in our ability to provide efficiency for our industry. What would happen from that eSource? Well, here's the next benefit. Once all of that data is in electronic source, these electronic source platforms are now networking with the next computer system, which is typically called EDC, Electronic Data Capture. Or similarly, the trial master file of a sponsor organization. If the data now seamlessly moves over into another computer system, no transcription errors, it allows everyone on the research team to see the data in real time, no delays, not a 24-hour delay, not a 48-hour delay, immediate. It allows the data to be captured correctly the first time. It reduces errors and improves industry efficiency. And you guys have heard me talk about this so many times in the past. That's what it's all about. Let's make the industry better. That's what electronic source does. So the purpose of electronic source is fundamentally reduce errors, improve the quality of the data, and secondarily, improve the efficiency of the research trial process. I believe that electronic source is mandatory. Every site must implement these robust systems to improve their quality. It requires an investment. Now, who's the ultimate beneficiary? The sponsors. Their data is of a higher quality if a site uses a good electronic source system. They're able to see the data more rapidly. They're able to spend less on monitoring the data. They don't have to fly people to my office to see the data. They don't have to fly people to my office to verify the data's accuracy within their electronic data capture system. They can see it all from their own home office. Huge benefits for the industry. How does the industry need to respond to this? The industry needs to do a couple of things. One, sites that invest in infrastructure, such as we're talking about today, electronic source, sponsors have to be willing to pay those sites more to compensate them for that investment in electronic source. The electronic source serves them as the customer. They have to be willing to compensate for that. Two, they should preferentially award trials to sites that have systems like that. And three, they should provide better contract terms to those sites. Better budgets, better study awards, better contract terms. Because the site is investing in infrastructure, which is expensive, especially for a site, is investing in infrastructure that benefits that customer. That's how the industry needs to respond. So today we're talking about electronic source. The two massive benefits are huge improvements in data quality and massive improvements in efficiency, and the industry needs to start compensating sites for this investment. That becomes the what's in it for me. If industry will compensate sites in the form of study awards and better contracted budget terms, sites will invest in the infrastructure, and a virtuous cycle happens. As always, thank you very much for riding along. Follow us on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, and I look forward to riding along with you again. Take care.